The first thing I noticed when I pulled into my driveway was the smell of fresh dirt, raw, metallic. Wrong. My stomach tightened before my eyes even registered what was missing. I stared at the empty strip of soil where my garden had been, the place that once bloomed with tomatoes, marigolds, basil, and memories. For a moment, I honestly thought I'd pulled into the wrong house. Then the reality hit me like a punch to the chest. My garden was gone. Every plant, every stake, every inch of care I'd poured into that ground erased. That garden wasn't just a hobby, it was therapy. I'd planted it after my wife passed, during the quiet months when the house felt too large and the nights felt endless. Each morning, I'd step outside with my coffee and talk to the plants like they were old friends. Neighbors waved. Kids stopped by to sneak cherry tomatoes. It was alive in a way I hadn't been for a long time. And now, after a single week away visiting my sister, it was nothing but churned soil and tire tracks. I didn't need to ask who did it. I already knew. Her name was Linda, but everyone in the neighborhood called her Karen behind her back. She was the president of the HOA, self-appointed ruler of curb appeal and clipboard justice. She'd complained about my garden before. You said it looked unregulated, messy, and unapproved. I'd shown her the HOA bylaws, the section that clearly allowed personal gardens within property lines. I'd even measured the distance from the sidewalk with her standing there, arms crossed, lips tight. She didn't like being told number. Still, I never imagined she'd go this far. I walked closer, kneeling down to touch the soil. It was freshly tilled, careless and rushed. Broken stems were half buried like bones. I felt something crack inside me, not anger at first, but grief. I sat there longer than I should have, the quiet buzzing in my ears louder than the birds overhead. Then I heard her voice. "Oh, you're back." I turned to see Linda standing on her porch, hands on her hips, sunglasses perched like a crown. She didn't look surprised. She looked satisfied. "What happened to my garden?" I asked, though the answer was standing 10 feet away in a floral blouse and smug posture. She sighed dramatically. "It was a violation. Multiple complaints. I had no choice." "You removed it while I was gone," I said slowly. "Without notice." "I left a notice," she replied. "In your mailbox." I knew that was a lie. My mailbox had been empty except for grocery ads and a water bill. "You can't just destroy private property," I said. She smiled, thin and cold. It was an eyesore. "The neighborhood looks much better now." I wanted to yell. I wanted to say things I couldn't take back. Instead, I stood up, brushed dirt from my knees, and said, "You'll be hearing from me." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Good luck with that." That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the garden the way it used to be, green and full, buzzing with bees. I kept replaying our past conversations, wondering if I'd missed some warning sign. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about rules. It was about control. The next morning, I started making calls. First, I contacted the whole board. Not Linda. Everyone else. Most didn't answer. One woman whispered that she was sorry this happened but didn't want to get involved. That told me more than words ever could. Then I called the county office. I didn't expect much. I figured they'd tell me it was a civil matter or whole business. Instead, the woman on the line asked a simple question that changed everything. "Was your garden registered under the state's native and pollinator-friendly landscaping program?" "Yes," I said. 3 years ago. There was a pause. Then, "Sir, do you know that removal of protected gardens without owner consent can result in fines?" I felt my pulse quicken. "Yeah, broken bar. I didn't know that applied here." "It absolutely does," she said. "And if what you're saying is accurate, this is a serious violation." She asked me to email photos, registration documents, and any communication from the home. I sent everything within the hour. I even found old pictures of the garden in full bloom, timestamps and all. By the end of the day, an inspector was scheduled to visit. When the state truck pulled up 2 days later, Linda nearly sprinted outside. I watched from my porch as she gestured mildly, talking fast, pointing at my yard like it had personally offended her. The inspector listened politely, then turned to me and asked a few calm questions. I answered honestly. I showed him the paperwork. He nodded and took notes. Linda's voice grew sharper. I was enforcing community standards. The inspector looked at her and said, "Ma'am, community standards do not override state environmental protections." Her face went pale. Over the next week, the investigation unfolded quietly. Soil samples were taken. Statements were recorded. Turns out my garden wasn't just registered up, it was part of a corridor supporting local pollinators. Removing it without notice or consent wasn't just rude, it was illegal. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. I didn't see it, but the whole neighborhood heard about it within hours. Linda received a state-issued fine for unauthorized removal of protected landscaping, along with an order to restore the damage at her own expense. The amount wasn't small, 5 figures. From what I was told, someone said she froze when she opened it, just stood in her kitchen, letter shaking in her hands. Someone else said she cried. I didn't take joy in that. What I felt was something quieter, a validation. She came to my door that evening. She looked different, smaller, somehow. No sunglasses, no clipboard. I didn't know, she said. I was just trying to do my job. I looked past her at the empty space where my garden had been. You weren't doing your job, I said. You were abusing it. There was a long silence. Finally, she nodded. I'm sorry. It didn't fix everything. Sorry didn't bring back the plants my wife and I had picked out together. It didn't undo the nights I'd spent grieving something that had helped me heal. But it mattered that she said it. Restoration took time. The state oversaw the process, ensuring native species were replanted correctly. Neighbors volunteered to help. Kids came by again, curious and excited. When the first new shoots broke through the soil, I felt something lift in my chest. The HOA elections happened that fall. Linda didn't run again. By spring, the garden was alive once more, and not the same, but growing. And so was I. Sometimes, standing there with dirt under my nails and sun on my face, I think about how easily power can turn into cruelty when no one pushes back, and how important it is to know your rights, to stand your ground even when your voice shakes. Because sometimes, the thing you're fighting for isn't just a garden, it's dignity. And sometimes, karma doesn't shout. Sometimes, it arrives quietly, a broken bar in an envelope,